这个故事如果你听起来不累，那么你的听力水平在生活中是完全够用的。要持续提升英文，记得点击订阅按钮。我们开始吧。
Long before people carried phones in their pockets, the streets of American cities had a different sound. At almost every busy corner there stood a payphone. It was tall, heavy, and made of cold metal. Most of them were placed under a small glass cover to block rain and snow. People stepped inside, closed the folding door, and spoke into a thick black receiver. But the most important part of that phone was the small slot on the front. Drop a dime. 10 cents. Without that coin, the phone stayed silent. In the late 1960s, the city of Brooklyn moved with loud energy day and night. Delivery trucks rattled over old streets. Radios played soul music through open shop doors. Subway trains roared under the ground like distant thunder. On one narrow block stood a small repair shop with a faded blue sign. Inside worked a young man named Eddie. His job was simple. Old radios came in broken. He opened them, cleaned the dust, changed the wires, and brought the music back. Some days he fixed 6 radios. Some days none at all. The shop smelled like hot metal and old wood. On the wall hung tools that had been used for years. Eddie knew each one by touch. Across the street stood a tiny grocery store owned by an old man named Sal. The store was narrow but warm. Bread sat near the door. Glass bottles of soda filled a tall cooler. A bell above the door rang every time someone walked in. Sal had owned the store for almost 30 years. Every morning when Eddie opened the repair shop, Sal waved from the door and lifted a paper cup. Cheap coffee. Eddie always crossed the street to take it. Life on that block followed the same rhythm every day. Workers passed by early in the morning. Kids ran home from school in the afternoon. At night, neon lights from a bar at the corner painted the sidewalk red and blue. And right beside that bar stood a payphone. It was used all the time. Taxi drivers stopped to make quick calls. Teenagers used it to talk for hours. Travelers dropped coins while reading numbers from small paper notes. The metal slot had swallowed thousands of dimes. Most nights nothing unusual happened on the block. But one winter night felt different from the start. The air was sharp and cold. A thin wind slid between buildings and pushed trash down the street. Eddie worked late that night because 3 broken radios had arrived before closing time. Inside the shop, a small desk lamp lit his table. Outside, the street grew quiet. Around 11, he locked the door and stepped outside. He pulled his coat tight and started toward the subway station. That was when he saw the car. A dark car rolled slowly past Sal's store. It did not stop at the light. It did not turn. It simply slowed down. Then it stopped beside the store. Two men stepped out. Their coats were long and their hats were pulled low. One looked up the street. The other tried the store door. It was locked. The man stepped back and kicked the glass hard. The sound cracked through the quiet night like a gunshot. Eddie froze. He stood near a stack of milk crates beside the repair shop door. From there he could see the whole sidewalk but stay hidden in shadow. The man kicked again. Glass shattered and fell inside the store. A moment later the two men rushed in. Inside came the noise of shelves falling and bottles breaking. A shout rose from deep in the store. "Sal!" Eddie felt his stomach tighten. He knew he should do something. But running inside against two men was foolish. They might carry knives. Maybe worse. For a few seconds he stayed frozen. The street looked empty. No police cars. No late walkers. Only the weak yellow light from a street lamp and the slow hum of the city far away. Then the men burst out of the store. One held a cloth bag. The other shoved him toward the waiting car. They jumped inside. The engine roared. The car shot down the street and turned the corner. Silence returned. Broken glass glittered on the sidewalk like small pieces of ice. Eddie walked slowly toward the store door. Inside he saw Sal leaning against the counter. His face was pale, but he was standing. "I'm fine," the old man said, breathing hard. "They just took money." Eddie nodded, but his chest still pounded. He stepped back outside. The payphone stood only 20 steps away. The metal box shone under the street light. He looked at it for a long moment. Calling the police was the right thing to do. Everyone knew that. But in many neighborhoods people avoided getting involved. Trouble had long memories. Some criminals returned later to ask questions. Eddie placed his hand in his coat pocket. A few coins touched his fingers. He pulled them out. Nickels. Pennies. And one small silver dime. He turned the coin slowly. 10 cents. That was the price of speaking. The street stayed quiet. Somewhere far away a train rattled across a bridge. Eddie walked to the phone. The metal door creaked when he pulled it open. Cold air slipped inside the narrow space. The receiver felt heavy in his hand. For a moment he only listened to the empty line. His other hand held the coin. If he walked away now, nobody would know. But Sal's tired face flashed in his mind. 30 years selling bread and milk on the same block. 30 years greeting neighbors every morning. Eddie pushed the coin into the slot. Click. The dime fell through the machine with a bright metal sound. A dial tone filled the receiver. He turned the dial carefully. Each number spun back with a soft ticking sound. The phone rang on the other end. Once. Twice. Then a steady voice answered. Police department. Eddie spoke quickly but clearly. 2 men. Dark car. Broken grocery store. They drove east toward the bridge. The voice asked about the car color. The direction. The number of people. Eddie answered everything he remembered. Then the line ended. The whole call lasted less than a minute. He placed the receiver back and stepped out of the booth. The wind felt colder now. Eddie walked home through quiet streets and slept poorly that night. Morning came with gray light and the smell of fresh bread trucks moving through the city. Sal's store opened late that day, but the lights were on. Eddie crossed the street with a nervous feeling in his chest. The doorbell rang. Sal stood behind the counter with a bandage on his hand but a big smile on his face. "They caught them," he said. "Near the bridge." Police had stopped the same dark car less than 30 minutes after the robbery. The bag of money still sat on the back seat. Someone had called quickly and given a clear direction. Sal laughed and lifted his coffee cup. Police said somebody dropped a dime on those guys. The phrase made Eddie smile. Dropped a dime. On the street, that line spread fast. By afternoon, the mechanic 2 blocks away used it. By evening, a taxi driver shouted it out the window. Word traveled the way city talk always traveled. Fast. Soon people across the city used the phrase. If someone secretly told police about a crime, people said he dropped a dime. The meaning was simple. A person used a payphone. A dime paid for the call. And trouble followed soon after. Years passed and the city changed. Payphones slowly disappeared from sidewalks. Cell phones replaced them. The metal booths were removed one by one. But language has a strange memory. The coins vanished. The phrase stayed. Even today, people still say drop a dime when someone reports a crime or reveals a secret. Most speakers never think about the small coin that created the words. But on a quiet block in Brooklyn long ago, 1 dime fell through a metal slot and made a sharp sound. Click. That sound meant someone refused to look away. Life gives moments like that more often than people expect. Moments when it is easier to stay silent and walk past the problem. No spotlight. No crowd. Just a choice resting quietly in your hand. Maybe not a coin. Maybe a phone. Maybe a few simple words. When that moment appears in your own life, Remember the sound that once echoed on thousands of city corners. Click. Sometimes the smallest action becomes the story people repeat for generations.
能以非母语者的身份专注学习到现在，这本身就是很棒的进步。真诚感谢你的观看。如果你觉得本期内容实用，点赞或留言让我知道你的想法，这对我持续创作非常重要。我们下期见。